think there was a Lyle. Is it Lyle? Lyle and Zato?
Lyle McDonald. We're never
you
friends.
Coached him, or he coached you? I can't
He has
remember.
alienated every single expert in the industry because he is insane and cruel and mean and psychotic and has zero accomplishments.
Today we'll critically examine Mike Israetel's recent tirade against you. I was thinking first I'll outline the context behind Mike's rant, because A, I don't even know if you're aware of its entirety, Lyle,
No.
And B, the circumstances are honestly just amusing in their own right. And second, we'll break down Mike's attacks and respond to them iteratively. Does that sound good?
Sure, but I want to make a couple of initial statements before we get into it.
Please.
The first one is, just so everybody knows, I was originally going to ignore this, right? If I gave a damn about the crap people talked about me on the internet, I would get even less work done than I normally do. So originally I wasn't going to bother with this, but then they took the video down and put it up and took it down, and Solomon's going to go through the history of that. At which
It is
point,
absurd.
yes, it is absolutely absurd, even by internet fitness BS. It is completely absurd. And I thought, well, if they're going to try to make this disappear, then yeah, it is absolutely worth people seeing Mike's nonsense in this regard. The second point I want to make is nothing we're going to address has anything to do with Mike's information, because I find it fascinating that Mike, God-tier IQ Israetel,
I'm both on a raw IQ scale smarter than almost every coach, maybe every coach.
the man who's smarter than every competition coach, the man who is better than Mike Menser by his own claims.
In a factual sense, but I don't want to come off like a dick. I'm bigger and stronger than Mike Menser.
In the 7 years since I criticized his information about what zero reps from reserve is, has yet to factually rebut a single one of my statements with evidence, science, or facts. We are 7 years later, and all he can fall back on is personal attacks, bold-faced lies, and what is probably coming close to crossing the line into legal slander. And you would think for someone such a genius, so good at what he does, being a complete failure as a bodybuilder, an exercise scientist who thinks he can criticize Dorian Yates' training, that he would be able to bring a fact or piece of evidence against my criticisms or yours or Greg Doucette's. And yet here we are. Now, in this, he's no different than the rest of the supposed scientific evidence-based industry, by which I include Lane Norton, Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, Menno Henselmans, all of them. They all pretend to be evidence-based until the science, by which when I bring it, says they're wrong. And then they all fall back on the same tired BS. They usually are using the same playbook, especially Lane. Because Lane has said stuff that is literally word for word identical to what Mike said about me most recently. It's just interesting. If these people are so smart, if their PhDs are so strong, why have they never been able to do anything but attack me personally, rather than rebutting my science with actual evidence? It's a good question. Go ask them. Then when they block you, you'll have your answer. Finally, and this is something that I will probably repeat a few times, in the case of someone like Mike Israetel, and also Lane Norton, both of whom are diagnosably narcissists. They both fulfill the criteria for NPD. You will notice all of their accusations are admissions. Everything they say about me is provably untrue, as we are going to demonstrate with facts, with evidence, with data. When they make these accusations, they are talking about themselves. But a narcissist will never believe that. So those are my three qualifications. One, I wasn't going to bother until they tried to make it disappear. Two, I'm still waiting for a single one of these rocket surgeons to rebut my facts, my science, my evidence with more than personal attacks. And three, when you're talking about narcissists, every accusation is admission. Let's do it.
Thank you for that introductory statement, Lyle. I'm going to describe the context of Mike's reply to you now. Seemingly out of nowhere, Eric Janicki, a bodybuilder, uploaded a YouTube video on the 3rd of March 2025 titled "Dr. Mike and Greg Doucette finally squashed the beef," with full interview next in parentheses. The goal, I guess, was to settle the long-standing hostility between Mike and Greg. But during the discussion, Greg, who's done a 2-hour podcast with the two of us, brought up your name.
Lyle, is it Lyle? Lyle Zato?
Lyle McDonald.
And alluded to the now infamous video that you and I did critiquing Mike's claims, one of which, of course, was that the bizarre claim that his body held 20 pounds of water on stage at his first bodybuilding show, which disproportionately pulled in his love handles.
And so I ended up carrying 20 pounds of body water on stage. That's thoroughly embarrassing. I have like big love handles that store a lot of water from back when I got fat on purpose to try to like do the spirit bulk.
And to this improbable account, I guess Greg, he found it implausible and edited in a blue lobster in his reaction video to our critique, which repeatedly appeared on screen whenever one of Mike's unlikely claims was stated. Now, during this conversation between Mike, Eric, Greg, Mike asked Greg about the blue lobster meme, which led Greg to mention you, Lyle, by name.
Same joke overall.
What's the blue lobster?
A blue lobster is a rare, like it only happens 1 in 2 million, and it's like a rarity. And so when you said something like the body water, 20 pounds of body water, it represents the rarity of the person that could have that issue. I think there was a Lyle, is it Lyle Zato?
Lyle McDonald.
And reference the 2-hour podcast we did. And in response, Mike launched into a lengthy, unhinged attack against you, one that we will soon examine in detail. But first, as you stated, there is a funny side note, I guess, about how I retrieved the video. Because, yeah, you're right. It was taken down. Initially, I intended to download Eric Janicki's Squashing the Beef video, but little did I know that later that day when I was in class learning about contracts and torts, Eric had quietly removed it, which sparked a brief panic. Fortunately, 2 people, Lefandrin, shout out to him, and an anonymous source saved it and sent it to me. Then, bizarrely, on the 4th of March, Eric re-uploaded a censored version which removed Mike's rant against you. And this was despite Mike's explicit statement in the video that he didn't want his words edited out.
He's if he hears this, don't edit this out. He's substantially less intelligent than he thinks.
Then, hours later, Eric deleted the censored version and reinstated the original uncensored upload, which once again contained the offensive material that amounts likely to slander against you.
Yeah.
So whatever's happening behind the scenes, I guess the footage is intact and we're ready to break it down. You reckon we should get started?
Yeah, and that whole thing, like, I'm still unclear, like, sort of exactly. I saw different versions of it because the one thing I was going to address that we'll get to is one of Mike's hilarious final claims against me. And I had done a YouTube short because that was really all I had to say about it. And then the video got deleted. And I figured they did it because they're cowards, because that's usually why they delete them. That's why the lifting dermatologists deleted their video, because they're too chicken to stand behind their words. So I re-edited the short. And then 12 hours later, it's back up. And I've heard that the reason it was taken down was not because they're... At that point, I just gave up and said, Solomon, I didn't want to edit it a third time because who knows what was going to happen on the next day. So I figured, you know what, let's just go ahead.
Honestly, by the time our video is out, there's probably going to be another development. So let's just focus on what Mike actually said and let the rest just play
I'm
out
hoping there will be a director's cut and we can start a release the Snyder cut hashtag and, to find out, like, let's see what was left on the cutting room floor. And like, who knows what the original video, maybe it's AI. We'll never know because they're just going to keep editing and re-editing and deleting the thing. Although I have to think part of it is when you do that, suddenly all the comments go away and have to be put up again. And given what's typically in the comment section of stuff like this, recently, it wouldn't surprise me if that, because when I went to, after they took the original down and put the edited version up, every other comment was, why did you take the original down? And then, of course, they flip-flopped it. And I imagine, of course, that made all those comments disappear. So I love
the comments. We've got classic I'm not into negativity.
I was basically condescending and negative towards you, and that's not a way I like to be at all.
Immediately shits on Lyle. Mike going after Lyle immediately after making up with Greg is insane. We've got Lyle McDonald is actually a very highly respected figure in science-based bodybuilding. Mike seems very salty that Lyle won their debate a while back. I mean, it just goes on and on. Why does Mike have to talk so harshly about Lyle? It just shows how bitter he is, not the time or place.
Oh, yeah. And that's, well, we'll get into this when you look at some of the things that he accuses me of. And
yes,
there's one individual I won't name who's like, why does Lyle hate Mike? I don't hate Mike. I don't have the energy to hate someone that worthless. Mike hates me to death.
Oh, that
Literally.
much is abundantly clear.
Right?
We will
Mike,
see that.
I live in Mike's head rent-free 24/7, 365. He did a podcast with Milo Wolf and started shaking when he heard my name and said, I can't even say his name.
By trouble, you mean Lyle McDonald.
I'm not allowed to say that name.
I don't hate Mike. Mike is a cancer on this industry who does more harm on a daily basis than anyone else possibly could. But I can't be bothered to hate anybody.
Due to his reach in
Correct.
large part.
And we'll talk about that too. But he hates me. And he probably hates me too, simply because we showed that the emperor has no clothes. Our video did more to destroy his reputation and has made such a majority of people realize how full of it he is.
And the difference is any reputational damage incurred doesn't amount to slander because everything we said was true.
Yes, it's not. Yes, that's something you see that all the time, again, among narcissists. It's slander because it hurts their feelings. It's slander because they don't like it. No, it's not slander if it's true. And everything we said is provably true. And everything he said about me is provably false. And
we'll get
going
into
to prove
that.
Well, most of it. Anyway, let's get enough.
So the first claim which Mike said after Greg mentioned you by name and the body water thing was that you're a terrible, insane person.
He said something about
He was a
snowflake.
terrible, insane person.
Which is
mean,
funny. Well,
sure.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
but I'll just say, attacking someone's character, you know as well as I do that that's a common rhetorical tactic when you're criticized but have no actual rebuttal to the substance of your critic's argument.
And I would just point out, to make my point, that with narcissists, every accusation is an admission. Someone asked Lane Norton, during the Zero Reps Reserve failure thing 7 years ago, who's right, Mike or Lyle? And Lane made 3 statements, none of which actually answered the question. The third one being, Lyle is insane. They all use the same playbook. Now, Lane Norton will absolutely war with every single person to the end of the earth across every form of social media. And I'm the insane one. Okay, sure, Lane, sure. Same thing here. Okay, so Mike says I'm insane. Now, am I the most emotionally stable person? No, I wouldn't claim to be. And I'll actually say the same thing that I retorted to Lane. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I am a little bit insane, but I'm also right, which is why none of them can actually rebut my facts. And relative to Lane and relative to Mike, I would rather be a little bit insane than to be who they are. Lane cheated on his pregnant wife. I'm not that. I'll take being a little bit insane over being that kind of trash human. Mike Israetel, and we'll get to this again later, thinks that threatening to assault someone, he said he wants to strangle me, is a rebuttal to scientific criticism.
You know, debating Lyle McDonald, like if he was in front of me, it would take the world for me to not choke him to death. You know, like I understand like why you would feel like that about someone.
I've never threatened violence against anybody. I've written mean words on a screen, and I'm the insane one? I'm not the one threatening to assault people. I'm not the one, for example, saying that I imagine strangling a puppy, which Mike Israetel said.
Now, I believe the quote is, man, wouldn't it be cool to like fight a dog with just your hands and kill it?
Like, man, it'd be cool to like fight a dog with just your hands and kill it.
Whatever, same thing. I've said, look, and make no mistake, pre-2014 me, before I dealt with my mental health issues and got medicated, I'll absolutely agree. I said some really inappropriate stuff. I will own that. I wrote a public apology that's still on my website because men take responsibility for their actions. Now, Mike is saying that I'm saying a terrible person because I made him look bad. And without getting into politics, if you want to see another great example of this, look at the wonderful leader of the US and how anyone that criticizes him goes from being a saint to a terrible person. The narcissist playbook is word for word identical. So yeah, I'm a little crazy. We all are. Mike is in no position to criticize, given that if you also criticize him, he will come screaming in your Instagram about how I can be better in your field within a year than you are.
You've never met anyone with as much willpower as me. I don't guarantee that. Statistics are what they are, but I bet a decent chunk of change on it. And whatever it is you think you're good at in your life, I'd probably take about a year and become an authority in the field in which you think you're good.
Whatever it is that you think you're good at in your life, it'd probably take me about a year to become an authority in the field
Mike
in which
is not
you
even
think
an
you're
authority
good.
at being a good bodybuilder, and people have made that point. Moving
Shall
on.
we move on? Yeah. Greg asks if Mike was ever your friend, to which Mike replies, he was never your friend.
I don't know if you guys were friends or
We're
maybe
never
you
friends.
coached him or
Which actually is true. But if Mike was trying to make it out as if that's down to him rejecting your friendship bracelet, then that'd be a bit deceptive, because for the longest time it was actually, as you may recall, Mike trying to be your friend and you rejecting his advances. He was really buttering you up for the longest time. For years he'd say things like, Lyle is brilliant. I have the utmost respect for Lyle. I think Lyle's probably smarter than me and knows a lot of shit.
And Lyle, listen, I think you're fucking brilliant, and I think you're onto a lot of really correct shit.
I have the utmost respect for Lyle. I think Lyle probably is smarter than me and knows a lot of shit, but
we're never going to like one another, and that's fine.
I'm open to liking you, Lyle.
So which is it, Mike?
Right. But again, there's no consistency. And I'll be honest, I don't remember much of that because I don't care. I was aware of him for years and years and years. And I don't think I paid I don't recall exchanging emails with him, although I believe he claims we did. And maybe he's right. I don't. I'm old and my memory is rapidly failing, so I won't say one way or the other. But if you go listen to the debate that we did, which if you watch it, honestly, was very civil. Right. I'll give him props. I'll give Steve Hall props for being very impartial. He
yes,
didn't really
Steve was a good moderator. I will say Mike was sort of performatively yawning while you were talking about your mum's concert pianism.
They used to let the conductors listen to the musicians play. And somebody noted that there were kind of a dearth of women getting elected.
I also firmly believe that Mike had been coached. And make no mistake, I was too. I got with some smart people to make sure I understood the statistics. Like I'm convinced that his explicit goal was to be so unbearably frustrating to get me to fly off the handle so that he could go, see, Lyle's just an unstable, and I didn't do it. I wouldn't bite. You can also see me in that thing just going.
Yeah, we went through this in our podcast with Greg.
Right. Regardless, at one point towards the end of it, because I think we did it on Valentine's Day for some ridiculous reason. I think if you go back, and he said something in that towards the end, and he said, you know what? You and I could still be friends. And I don't remember what my response was to that, but I don't have any interest one way or the other. I mean, again, I had no malice towards the guy. I don't really remember what my opinion of, other than he was, part of Brad's posse and kissing up and defending a volume paper that none of them ever actually believed in with the most ridiculous arguments. But even when when I did the whole failure thing, it was because I wanted to take a pot shot at him, and I'll be the first one to admit that. But did I ever want to be friends with Mike? No, not that I'm aware of. And if he's got emails to the contrary, post them up, buddy. It's easy to make
get
claims.
to that.
Yeah. So anyway,
the email allegations.
Okay. I mean, again, that's the narcissist playbook. Lane had hundreds of emails about metabolic damage. There was tons of evidence about voter fraud that never showed up in the US. Narcissists always play the same games. All right, moving on.
Mike claims that you've alienated every expert in the industry because you're insane, cruel, mean, psychotic, and have zero accomplishments.
He is insane and cruel and mean and psychotic and has zero accomplishments.
Okay, I'll have to ask you. Okay, so have I alienated all experts in the field? No. I've alienated a handful of experts that are part of the supposed evidence-based circle jerk.
Yes.
Brad Schoenfeld, Eric Helms, James Krieger, Menno Henselman, Mike Israetel. I know there's a couple others. There are lots of people in this field.
Yes, and if you alienated anyone in the evidence-based sphere, then it's basically just because you held them accountable, as in you
Correct.
called out their nonsense when no one else would.
Correct. If we go back to the 2000s, there was a different circle jerk in place. Alan Cosgrove, Jimmy Smith, Jimmy Moore, it was all part of, they were all, and I did the same thing. They were selling the same BS with the same line of patter, and I would say, this is what the actual science says. And I was persona non grata. I alienated them because I actually tried to, hold them to the truth and evidence, and they didn't want to hear it because that hurt their profit picture. I alienated Brad by bringing up valid criticism of his volume studies that he could not address. I alienated James because he's one of Brad's lackeys. I alienated Eric because he's one of Brad's lackeys. Menno, I alienate because I point out that he's wrong repeatedly. Greg Knuckles, who also whines about me having no accomplishments and not being a success, I alienated him by pointing out that a couple things in his book were wrong and criticizing his Bulgarian powerlifting thing with completely valid facts. Now, if
I can't speak to Greg Knuckles, but I know that each of the names you mentioned had been in your Facebook group for years, even newer names like Milo Wolf. He was in your Facebook group for years, absorbing your information.
Sure. And then as soon as they got butthurt over me because I said something critical of their work that they could not address, they all wimped out of my Facebook group. Most of them block me because they can't address the criticism. You can prove it to yourself. Go to Brad Schoenfeld's Instagram and take an issue with something that he said. He'll either ignore it if he can't address it, or he'll block you. They all do it. Milo, again, he was in my Facebook group for 4 years, never said a word, never commented, never debated anything I said, never criticized anything I said. Then we had the squat challenge thread, which he stepped up well enough. I said, I'll pay $1,000 to anyone who can finish the workout. He did, and I did pay him. Then he got butthurt over something else I said, flounced out, and then put me in D tier and said, Lyle does not have any expertise in hypertrophy.
To quickly talk about someone else who knows remarkably little about how to interpret exercise science research, unsurprisingly, given he's never conducted any studies himself, Lyle McDonald. The one brownie point I'll give him is that he stuck to his promise and gave me $1,000 for completing the challenge. Beyond that, very poor at interpreting research, quick to accuse researchers of bias, and has name-called nearly everyone in the industry at some point. Bottom D tier.
Well, why were you in my Facebook group for so long? Why did you sit there absorbing information? If I'm such shit, if I'm so dumb, if I'm so ignorant, then people do this all the time. They'll be in my Facebook group for years, and then they'll pipe up and I'll get in their face and be like, you suck, you're nothing, blah, blah, blah. Like, then why were you here? Why were you in a Facebook group when you thought so little of me? And it's because, yeah, I do alienate people because I actually hold them accountable for what they're saying. And if that alienates them, that's a them problem. It's real simple, because I'm not going to kiss up to them to play politics and kiss their ass to be part of their group if they're going to be a bunch of hypocrites and liars like Mike and spread false information and expect everyone else to address their criticisms and be incapable of addressing mine. I have no interest in being friends with those people.
Yeah, so as to these experts whom you might have alienated, they respect your work. But even if they didn't, the truth isn't decided by popularity contests. Surely, I mean, if Mike's argument is most people don't like Lyle, therefore he's wrong, then that's just an appeal to the bandwagon.
Yeah. And there are many people, like, many people do have difficulty making that separation. Okay. There's a lot of people that I like as people. I think their information is crap. And I'm not going to mention names. There are lots of people that I dislike as human beings and think their information is great. Those have nothing to do with one another. If I have an issue with their information, I'll criticize the information. If I have a criticism with them as a person, I'll criticize them as a person. Those are different things, but these folks can't see it that way. Yeah, they all still will repeat the same things I've said 10 years later. They'll never acknowledge that it was mine. They won't acknowledge the influence I had on their models, their belief systems. But because I butthurt them, they'll just talk endless shit about me. If people can't handle the truth and facts and evidence, that's a them problem. It's just that simple. I don't care if people like me or not. Clearly, if I did, I would act very differently. The information is the information. Because people also play the game of, yeah, Lyle tells it like it is. Lyle gets in your face until I do it to them. And then suddenly I'm a no good POS, nothing who's never accomplished anything. It's funny how that game gets played.
Can we talk about that? The
Well,
claim that having zero accomplishments somehow alienates people is nonsense. And I think that just highlights how gratuitous Mike's insults are.
Let's come back to that to the end. So we went through mean, we went through, I don't see what, like I said, I'm not the one threatening to assault people because they criticize my work. So Mike calling me psychotic, I'm not really sure what that, like, it's probably because, yeah, when I get irritated at people, yeah, I send them pissy emails. So that you've alienated all the experts. No, I've alienated this small circle jerk of people that defend one another's BS, even when they know it's wrong, because it's economically valuable for them. They're playing politics. Mike thinks that him and his 5 little buddies are the only experts in the world. Oh, going to the narcissist thing. Another one of Lane Norton's claims, Lyle thinks he knows more than every expert in every field. That is provably false. Come into my Facebook group and I will defer to the experts in their fields every day. Lane, on the other hand, thinks he is an expert in every field above and beyond everyone else. Just like Mike thinks he, so again, every accusation is an admission. And I think that brings us to Lyle has 0 accomplishments.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's talk about that.
Now, am I wrong? Didn't Mike at some point say that, like, I had been an industry leader and basically been top tier in the field?
He used to be one of the top fitness industry scientific experts.
Yeah, so he's arguably contradicted himself
So
there. How can
Mike
you at once be a top scientific expert and have 0 accomplishments?
Mike
It's a
can't even keep
contradiction.
his lies straight in one conversation, like all narcissists. The fact that he contradicted himself a few minutes apart, he believes both are true at the same time.
Seconds, actually.
It can't be both, Mike, but because I believe what it was, this was all relayed to me, was like, oh, I was a leader in my field, but then I alienated everyone by being a big old meanie head, but I also have no accomplishments. Okay, cool. All right, so let's look at that claim.
Well, you have plenty of accomplishments. You basically introduced the very concept of a scientific or evidence-based approach to bodybuilding to the internet. You were the first person. You've published like 14 books. You introduced the concept of flexible dieting to the fitness industry, basically. You've coached a world record holding powerlifter, and you coached Larry Shipe, whom we did an interview with, to a Natty Pro card. I mean, can you really be said to have 0 accomplishments?
It's so ridiculous just at
Seems
face
far from
level
it.
because it is so easily disprovable. So yeah, so let's go back.
I mean, the endless testimonials as well.
I created the online evidence-based industry. That was me. Although in hindsight, I think it was a mistake because it gave people like Mike Israetel a platform to pretend to be a scientist when it suits him, right? Like 30 years down the road, I think it was a mistake. But that was me.
Oh, by the way, when I say you published 14 books, I don't just, you can publish 14 bad books, but your books
sure. Well,
are widely held to be some of the more helpful ones.
I've published what are considered the seminal works on ketogenic diets, my first book, Protein for Athletes, and
it was in
Women's
the UT
Physiology.
Austin library, wasn't it? You were telling me.
My keto, it is in university libraries because it is a tome. My protein book is a tome. Nobody will ever or could ever write a book equivalent to my women's book. So there's 3 right there. And I dare say, Mike, that the Renaissance periodization scientific guide to hypertrophy crap will not hold up over the long term. My books will be around. Okay, so in 2004, yes, I was the first to introduce the concept of flexible dieting to the industry. I was the first. Some people even gave me credit for it. Some people plagiarized my stuff and pretended they invented it. Lane claims that he really was the one that did the most to popularize flexible dieting. Oh, get bent.
Like macro tracking, flexible dieting, I was kind of the one who popularized that.
Yeah.
But it was me. I was the guy. The stubborn fat protocols that I did in the book in 2009, those protocols are essentially part and parcel of contest prep now. There is Sumi, my elite powerlifter, who in 1 year, in any 1 year of her 8-year career, won more awards and set more records than Mike has ever done in his entire career. So no accomplishments, Mike? Come on. This is just sad.
Thank you, Lyle. We'll move on because
This is
it's funny.
my tirade.
Your input is very good. I think that's
Well, I mean,
about what needs to be said. But Greg, to his credit, he says that you seem educated. And Mike replies, Lyle is smart, but nowhere near as smart as he thinks.
He seemed educated. He must be like
He's educated.
Like, he must have
he's
like
a smart guy.
The studies.
He's a smart
like,
guy. He's if he hears this, don't edit this out. He's substantially less intelligent than he thinks.
Which is so basically his accusation here is that you're delusional.
Again,
Your perception doesn't align with reality. Ironically, I think that's a claim that often falls back on the person making it, because we know Mike Israetel never boasts about his intelligence.
I'm both on a raw IQ scale smarter than almost every coach, maybe every coach.
all accusations are admissions when it comes to narcissists, because I am told Mike did a video of his 20 biggest flaws, and among one of them, he said he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder about his intelligence.
I still have a chip on my shoulder about my intelligence, still to this day.
Mike is not talking about me, right? I don't. I think I know a lot.
Astutely observed.
I know a lot about a few things. I have dedicated 30 years of my life to this field, and I know a little about a lot of things. I know enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about, as long as conversations stay exceedingly superficial. And that's just so I can occasionally deal with small talk about nonsense, right? But I would never pretend, right? But all these people who are like, oh, you know, Lyle thinks he's smarter than me or whatever, or smarter than everyone else, or smarter than he is. Well, A, have I ever said that? No, because people who are smart don't have to say it. They show you. And if you look at my output over the decades that I've been doing this, if you look at my ability to make scientific arguments, that's what you should be judging it on. It's not a matter of my personal opinion of myself. Then look at, say, some of Mike's statements. Sleep is more important than steroids.
An hour of extra sleep that brings you from sleeping 2 hours less than you need to 1 less than you need is unreal powerful and comparable to tons of anabolic drugs.
I think most might consider that an unintelligent statement.
Yes.
The naturals should train more than the pros. I think most might consider that an unintelligent statement.
You should probably train more than the pro bodybuilders you follow. That is.
So again, when it comes to narcissists,
striated glutes aren't unhealthy.
People see striated glutes and they go, that can't be healthy. And I would love to be in real life with that person instead of over social media and say, okay, no, I hear you. Why not?
Which is a message he put out to natural lifters in the general population.
And again, if Mike or anyone, if you want to prove that I'm not as smart as you think I am, like I said, I know I'm good at what I do. After 30 years of literally dedicating every minute of every day of every year to pretty much nothing but this, I'd hope I'd be okay at it. Right.
Fair enough.
I would like to think that I'm decent at what I do. And I think when people, you know, see the insanity of my books, they would probably have to acknowledge that, yeah, he's unstable.
Check the description, discount code. Mike has no 10 for Lyle's books and services.
Yeah, you know, exactly. Like, oh yeah, I should admit, you know, should probably mention again, I also just wrote what will end up being the seminal book on GLP-1s, because I read every study.
We did a podcast on it.
Yes, there are things in that book. Like I'm working with a couple guys, like they work with these compounds in practice, in clinic. They didn't know half the stuff I was talking about, right? There are concepts in that book that I guarantee you nobody but me is aware of. But anyway, okay, so Mike makes that claim. Well, if you want to show that that's demonstrably true, that what I'm saying as part of thinking I'm smarter than I am is factually incorrect, you rebut that with facts, Mike, not with ad hominem personal attack BS. If you think I'm wrong, when the fact is every piece of research on bar speed at 0 reps in reserve shows that it slows down, every single one, without exception, every piece of scientific evidence. If you think I'm wrong, and you're an exercise scientist who criticizes Jack Reacher's workout or whatever nonsense you put up today, if you think that's true, It's real easy to prove it. Show that I'm factually wrong. You've had
Yeah.
7 years to do it, and yet here we are. If it were that easy, to show that I was wrong, because you've done it. You've done videos about Mike's claims, and you can show factually why they're incorrect without going, Mike's a dum-dum. That's Mike's entirety response to criticism. You're dumb. You suck. I effed you in the A. That's what he said about Doucette after their debate about failure, right? It's just assertion that, oh, I won, but you didn't. You provided no facts. You talked in circles. There is no evidence. There's only one person delusional here about their knowledge, and it's the guy that has never been able to get into shape and never will, and who thinks it's because he didn't get a goddamn tan. Coupon code Mike has no tan, 10% off all my books. So yeah, again, all accusations are admissions. Always has been.
According to Mike, you invited Brad Schoenfeld to debate you, but Brad didn't because Mike describes him as
he asked Brad Schoenfeld to debate him on a study that Brad published.
Yep.
Brad wasn't going to do it because he's a respectable scholar, but I'm not such a respectable person.
I never did any
So,
such thing.
I guess, no. Okay, so that's the first thing. It'd be great if Mike could provide this evidence.
I never did any.
Because,
I never.
No. In the absence of evidence, what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. That's Hitchens' phrase. But also, I mean, according to Mike, the hallmark of a respectable scholar is apparently refusing to defend one's claims when challenged. That's a fascinating redefinition of academic integrity, isn't it?
I would love to hear what his professors back at MTSU would think about this. Because, yeah, science is and has always been based on open debate and open criticism. You can get into the letters pages of any journal and watch researchers go back and forth because real academics are willing to defend their beliefs in a public forum, not make YouTube videos where their assertions and lies cannot be rebutted. To my knowledge, and if Mike has the email, please send it to me. Brad used to teach a class on logical fallacies, but I swear to God, these people take that class and use it as a how to win internet arguments because they use all of them on a consistent basis. So I would not have ever emailed Brad to say, let's debate this. Mike was the one who brought it up. And I was like, why? And then everyone was like, Lyle doesn't want to do it and he's a coward. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. It's a waste of time, but I did do it. It was a waste of 90 minutes, but I did agree to it.
Yeah, so on the topic of this debate, so following on from his baseless assertion that you invited Brad Schoenfeld to debate with you, Mike states that he stepped in to debate you because, unlike Brad, he's not such a respectable person, but that you didn't want to go up against Mike and said to him in an email, you're a tough guy. I'm not going to go up against you.
So I said, I'll take a shot at the title. Went back and forth in email. And he basically said, like, okay, you're a tough guy. I'm not going to go up against you.
That's a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, Mike, let's see the email.
I would never, because that's just not the kind of thing I would say. I would never,
no, of course not. And if he doesn't produce the evidence, then we have no reason to believe it exists. Again, Hitchens' razor.
Somehow it got lost.
I mean, look.
I would never say that.
If you have to manufacture falsehoods to make a point, then that says more about your argument.
They're pathological liars.
Well, actually, funny that you should bring up Mike's 20 flaws, because in that same video in which he admits that he has a chip on his shoulder about his intelligence, he also admits that he's lied a lot in the past.
I've lied a lot.
But I guess now he tells the truth. He's done a 180.
This is a man who admits that he lies a lot. What? I'm not going to debate you on a computer screen because you're a tough guy, and you're going to do what? Reach through the screen? This isn't one of those old weird horror movies. This isn't The Ring. Mike's the one who gets butthurt over words on a screen. And here's the thing. Even if I did say that, which I didn't. And again, Mike, if you got the email, send it to me. I'll put it up on my social media. I'll do an entire YouTube video saying you were right. LyleMcDonald23@gmail.com. Send me the email and I will publicly announce that you were right. Send it to Solomon. CC whoever you want so that if we magically don't put it up, you can go, see, I did send it. And then they do it. Do it. I'll put it up in a heartbeat. I promise you I will. But you won't. And the excuses for this will be fascinating because they always are.
Correct. Yeah.
And even if I had said that, which I didn't, did we do the debate? Yeah, so clearly what's the damn issue? Other than he's looking for another way to go, Lyle wanted to debate Brad. That's a lie. Brad said no. Well, that's a lie because you can't say no to something I never asked. And then I sent him an email, said, I won't debate you because you're a tough guy. No, didn't care about debate it because there's nothing to debate. My criticisms of the problems with that study are completely valid, period. And all that needed to happen was Brad needed to address them directly. There was nothing to debate. But he wanted to do it. I went ahead and said yes. So even if I had said, I'm scared of debating you, did I show up? Yeah. Did I waste 90 minutes of my life so that I could give direct answers while Mike talked in circles for his 45 minutes?
Well observed.
That's how Mike works. Oh, no, because I noticed it. And just because it's funny and because he missed it, because he, at some point in that podcast, because I did, I just watched him. You can ask him a question. You ask me a question, I'll talk for 10 minutes and I will eventually get to the point. It just takes me a little while. Ask Mike and he'll talk in circles for 10 minutes and never actually give a concrete answer. And I looked at him and I said, Mike, you should be in politics. And he said, I don't know what you mean. And I said, of course you don't. And I moved right on.
If no one's ever told you before, you should be a politician.
Of course you don't, sweetie. Mike has the ability to talk through both sides of his mouth, tell one lie to this group of people, tell a contradictory lie to this group of people, and believe both are true when it suits him.
Yep.
He'll never be a successful bodybuilder, but damn, he could be a successful politician because that man can lie in a heartbeat. That's his
by
truth
his own
goal.
admission. I mean, he's stated that it's very easy for him to lie.
No, Solomon, that's old Mike. That was Mike the day before the Greg Doucette thing. Everything you said there, the supposed emails that will never materialize, the fact that I had zero, no, that was all the stone cold truth. The day before was the last lie he ever told. The lie being that I don't lie anymore. We can talk about the two guys, and one always lies and one always tells the truth. I bet Mike has that one solved too.
Great
he
riddle.
solved the trolley problem, so I'm sure he knows how to solve that one.
I love that riddle. Anyway, shall we move
let's move on
to the, I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time addressing this claim, but it's that apparently you provide good content because you have lots of mean things to say about Mike that sound sort of thought through.
But I understand, like, getting him on and getting all the insight. It's really good content if you're going to bash me, because he has a lot of mean things to say about me, and they sound sort of thought through.
I guess here he's referring to the video that you and I did together as good content.
So it's good, but it's not, mainly because it's critical of him.
So he describes your criticisms as mean, but I guess when he says they sound sort of thought through, he seems to be implying that they're superficially plausible, but maybe upon closer examination are false. That could describe him. He says a lot of things that sound superficially plausible and he delivers them authoritatively, but they're nonsense and they're patently false upon a closer examination.
Well, again, I told you I was going to keep repeating this. For narcissist, every accusation is an admission. If Mike thinks that our criticisms are poorly thought through, the onus is on him to demonstrate factually why they are poorly thought through. Because if it's that easy, if they're that poorly thought through, if they're that full of so many logical holes, they should be easy to disprove. And yet here we are with mere assertion. Oh, like when he said, the critics of failure, they're just not very intelligent.
You have enough muscle, and whoever tells you you do not train to failure because your rep speed is not slowing down. Like,
those people are just not intelligent.
The people we know.
Well, if we're so unintelligent, prove us wrong with facts. Showing the study that bar speed doesn't slow at 0 reps in reserve. Should be easy to find, Mike. You're an exercise scientist who criticizes Dorian Yates training and thinks, I don't think he does enough. Yeah, I mean, he only won 6 Olympias. If he trained more, he probably would have won 12, right, Mike? Isn't that how bodybuilding math works? If he'd done 8 sessions a week, Dorian would have run twice as many Olympias, right? Now, that's a poorly thought out statement, but I'm being facetious. Mike, you can look that word up online. In case you're not clear on what that is. Might even be a little bit obsequious saying that. And again, Mike, you can look that one up
What?
too.
That doesn't make sense. How would that be
Don't care
obsequious?
Because it's a fun word to say.
If it doesn't work there.
You don't work here.
Sorry, I'm no fun. I know what you're doing.
Idiot or attentive, excessive or okay. So yeah,
It's like a sycophantic.
Yeah, if our criticisms are that poorly thought out, Mike,
smarmy,
it should be easy to dismiss them with facts. And yet here we are.
Unctuous, ingratiating. Yeah. I like my synonyms.
Defenestrating. Just as a quick tangent, because I had 3 years of Latin in high school because it was required. I've never been clear on if defenestration is an active or passive verb. I don't know if it's to be thrown out a window or to throw someone out a window.
Defenestration is a noun.
Well, to defenestrate, though.
Oh, yeah, that's a verb. Yeah.
Okay, I should have just looked it up. It is the action of throwing someone out of a window. Well, there you go.
I think Mike's going to want to defenestrate you after this.
You know, it's funny. He's been in Austin twice in the last year, and he's never reached out to me to strangle me. It's really funny.
It is funny.
It's interesting. It's really
someone who talks big game about.
Well, didn't he say he wanted to punch out Greg Doucette too? And they met face to face, and yet somehow, it's Daniel Pekic intensifies. Because again, all these guys are just like, yep, real men should settle things with fists, and then words on the screen just cause them such emotional trauma.
Well, Mike measures people's worth through gauges other than just physical prowess. He also remarks that you've been losing followers for a really long time.
He's a person that has been losing followers for a really, really long time.
First, I don't think is true. I mean, I've been keeping track of your Instagram and YouTube following and subscriber count respectively since we started doing videos together, and they've gone up astronomically. But even if your following hadn't gone up, is Mike implying that the quality of an argument depends on the popularity of its author? Because that'd be truly absurd.
So this isn't the first time I've heard those. So there was a paper that got criticized many years ago. I forget what it was. It's been far too long. And Menno Henselman. So there's a thing called ResearchGate, and it's essentially social media for nerds, for scientists, where they put up free papers and stuff. And literally his defense was, this paper is good because the author has a high ResearchGate rating. Basically, science is now a popularity contest. Someone in my Facebook group, over the videos we put up, made a very similar argument. Well, rather than criticizing Mike's information, because he was like, why don't you just do this? I go, Mike has 3 million people that he lies to every day. He's like, well, rather than doing this, why don't you just work on your marketing and get more people following you? What? It's not an argument. And look, I'm quite sure over the years, people, they bolt out of my Facebook group, usually because I'm mean to them. And they usually flounce out and get all pissy with me. Yeah, you're this and that. And I'm going to give you this one guy last year is like, I got in his face about something because we put up the Mike Israetel thing. This guy had not said a word in 10 years. He'd been on my group for 10 years, totally silent, and felt the need to chime in on this one thing about how we were wasting our time. And I was like, I'm flabbergasted by this.
There were several instances of that.
There were, but this is one specific one. You've been in this group for 10 years. You've never contributed anything, and you come in to whine about this one topic.
Brilliant.
If you're not, and he was like, F you, Lyle, and he wrote this big block text about, hi, I'm the C word, and this is British, and all this other stuff. I'm going to give you a little piece of advice. You're not going to be nicer to people. You're never going to be successful. And it's like, okay, F you too. If you think so little of me, again, it's after they get butthurt. People love that I'm in, Lyle's direct and tells it like it is until I do it to them. And then they'll go butthurt and whiny. And I'm like, then why are you in my Facebook group? They're like, for the lols. Really? You stay in your group for 10 years because you think I suck and wanted to see that? Okay, sure. It's the mental gymnastics.
Well, it's ad hoc.
Well, yeah, it's like they decide after the fact. I've had several people do that. But even if it were true, and my Instagram, and as much as I rarely post to it, it's growing. And my face, I did a bunch of YouTube videos, and People join and people, yeah, and I've heard a bunch of people's feelings and they don't like me because I'm a big old meanie head. And so what? Like what? Since what? Like, yeah, fine. Mike's got 2.9 million followers because he had the marketing muscle of RP behind him. It's not to do with anything with his information being any good, because it's not. It has to do with the fact that they had good marketing people because they had a money guy to throw a lot of money at this. And I don't, and I don't care, right? I truly don't. Because if I did, I would do things very differently. But yeah, it is objectively false, I think, numerically. But again, I don't pay attention to my analytics. So, because I don't live and die by them. And even if so, because I guess what Mike's saying is that it's better to have lots of followers by pandering to them, lying to them, telling them what they want to hear, than to be honest and lose them. And again, in as much as accusations from narcissists are always admissions, how many followers do you think Mike lost from our video? I bet it's a whole lot more than I lost by being mean. No, we can't prove that
I'm not
factually,
sure.
But watching the tone of the internet relative to him change, watching so many people finally see through the lies and the bullshit due to our critiques and Greg's and others. Make no mistake, we were not the only ones. We just made it cool, and we made it okay to dump on this, high guru or whatever. I guarantee you, he's had more people lose faith in him than have ever lost faith in me. And number one, what is he basing this on? Like, does he track my analytics? Does he stalk me? I mean, he's made claims to that about, I know for a fact that Lyle has done this.
Well,
really?
I think it was just a baseless assertion.
Sure.
Slanders, actually.
Yes, it is. It's basically, I'm just trying to say, well, Lyle's information, somehow my information is bad because I'm losing. What? Also, because again, it's objectively disprovable. It is. My YouTube channel is still very small because I don't.
When I say it grew astronomically, I mean in relative terms.
In relative terms, my Facebook group has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger because of the videos we're doing.
Yes.
By all metrics I'm aware of, if anything, more people are hearing my message and like what it is because of what
yes,
we've
it's
done.
false that you've been losing followers for a
Sure.
really long time.
But again, it even if it were true, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with my. It's just him character assassinating me, like he did with the lifting dermatologist. Since he cannot rebut my poorly thought out arguments with anything approximating evidence, he's got to come after me personally. That's what they all do. That's what they all have always done.
Shall we move on? Just before I thought of another synonym for obsequious, wheedling. Anyway, sorry, I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
No, that was the enzyme on Star Trek Next Generation that kept blowing up the core reactor.
Oh yeah.
No, that was Wesley. Go on. It was a reference that didn't even land. So
I'm too young.
No,
I should watch Star Trek, but anyway.
That was way before your time.
I mean, I know about Spock.
Oh no, this is Next Generation. This was early '90s when they redid it with Jean-Luc
I wasn't
Picard.
even alive.
Yeah, with Jean-Luc Picard as the captain and Worf and Data and all of that stuff. So it was on when I was in college. And fun fact, Patrick Stewart, who played Jean-Luc Picard, taught at UCLA a couple years before I went there. He's in the English department.
Cool.
I never would have run into him. But yeah, that was my near brush.
Oh, that's awesome.
With nerd greatness. So
wow.
I also worked at a place briefly where the actor who played RoboCop worked out. So that was
cool.
That was pretty cool.
That is cool. I like that movie.
Moving on.
Well, apparently, according to Mike, and this ties into an earlier, I mean, we've raised this before, but I do want to return to it. It's that you used to be one of the top scientific experts until you were mean to everyone.
Like he has a fault. Like I didn't know
he used to be one of the top. He used to be one of the top fitness industry scientific experts back in the early 2000s. No joke. Yeah. And then he's just mean to everyone.
So apparently you were brilliant until you hurt some feelings. And then
now I'm stupid.
I guess you stopped being brilliant. Mike doesn't seem to grasp that science isn't predicated on how nice you are. Right. If your work was sound before, then surely it's sound now, regardless of any mean words.
Well, and I would point out again, Mike is basically defining mean as actually expecting these other supposed scientists to back their claims. Now, if that's what you define as mean,
being a
then,
whistleblower, basically.
Yeah, basically going, well, here's what the actual facts are, and you should defend them. If that's being mean, then I'm sorry. Science has a lot bigger, exercise science has a lot bigger problems, right? Because that's what he's saying, right? Milo liked me until I was mean to him, and that I made a statement that wasn't even aimed at him in the first place about the 52 set workout. Brad used to invite me to talk to his class. He suggested me as a peer reviewer on a PCOS paper until I criticized his research. And then I was persona non grata and was suddenly the biggest moron in the field. Now, people would say, but you did the same thing with Brad. No. I criticized Brad's actual evidence, and I had the facts to back it up. I don't think he's a moron. I think he's a bad scientist, and I can prove that factually. He thinks I'm a moron because I criticized him. That's different. So Mike is saying that I mean because I'm, right, but also because I'm critical in a field that's based on criticism. Science is based on argument and debate. Otherwise, it's religion.
Yes.
And of course, for gurus, it is religion. But I find it interesting that Mike says I'm mean when he's the one saying that he wants to strangle people, that he's the one threatening violence, that he's the one making personal attacks. Who's the one being, and that's not mean. It doesn't hurt my feelings because it's just laughably pathetic. It's laughably pathetic that this big, burly, juiced up drug pig has taken so many steroids that his balls are so shrank that he cannot handle valid criticism while he feels like he can criticize others, just like the rest of the guru crew, right? But I'm the mean one because I hurt his little feelings, because that's what it comes down to. And again, if that's what you consider being mean, providing scientific evidence on why what you're saying is wrong, then that's weak-minded as hell, and you have no business in science. Because what's also funny, and this is a general truism, I've known actual scientists. What they are in person, if you heard the amount of crap they talked about each other behind closed doors, it would blow your mind. They don't do it in scientific journals, right? Because journals have a certain expectation of the way things are presented and the way things are written. I've always found letters to the editor to be truly hilarious because they're so passive aggressive.
Paul Carter alleged on his Instagram that scientific experts within the fitness industry have reached out to him, telling him that they think Mike has done more than any person currently to erode the public's trust in evidence-based bodybuilding fitness practices.
Not that I would take anything Paul Carter said with more than a grain of salt, but I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know. I don't even know if I'd go that far, because I don't think most people listening to Mike's gibberish even think of it in terms of exercise science. It's a bunch of 14-year-old wannabe bodybuilders listening to a guy who's big and being lied to. But again, fine. If Paul Carter says that, then cool. Put up the messages. There's an old song. This is way before your time. This is early internet days. And you can go Google it. It's called The Lurkers Support Me in Email, or The Lurkers Support Me in Private. It's something like that. So you get into flame wars with people. And when they can't address your actual argument, they'll go, I've gotten dozens of emails from lurkers who agree with me and say I'm right. Do they? Fine, we'll put them up. No. They asked me to remain anonymous. Cool story, guys. Right? Maybe it's true. I don't know. Like I said, anything Paul Carter says I would take with a humongous grain of salt. But for people that actually understand training, that understand physiology and understand science, would absolutely look at what Mike's telling people. And I don't know if he's done the most to erode people's faith in sports science, because I don't know that most of his listeners think in those terms. I don't think that's his general audience. I could be very wrong about that. But whatever. I think I would absolutely say that Mike personally has done more to harm this industry in terms of providing provably terrible information that changes every day with nothing but endless lies. I mean, going back to the failure thing, and I know I keep harping on this, but I provided 30 videos showing what happens to bar speed. Mike's rebuttal was F you, Lyle, and then a bunch of nonsense, and then an hour of character defamation, right? And the people, his followers, all, you know, infested my comment section with a bunch of nonsense. It was more important for him to not have to admit to being wrong. He was happy to waste. And then 7 years later, he does that, some podcast with someone, some interview, and he's like, you know what, if you're not grinding or really exerting effort on that last rep, it's not a training set, which is exactly what I was saying.
So towards the end of all of your sets, either the weights are slowing down, or even if it's the same speed, to you, they feel perceptively harder. You know, you do this, this, and in a couple reps, you're like, that's what you want.
He was happy to waste their very short training lives. People that trust him, that take him as providing good information. He was happy to waste years of their training simply to avoid admitting he was in the wrong. That's sociopathic.
Yeah.
That probably borders on dark triad, but I don't know enough about it to know if that's part of the cluster.
Well, the dark triad is Machiavellianism, narcissism, and antisocial personality disorder.
Okay.
We leave it as an open question.
Yeah, I don't want to get it.
Mike fits the criteria.
Right. I don't want to play online, but in a pragmatic sense, in a real world sense, he's more concerned with having people tell him how great he is. Right. Again, it's classic narcissistic behavior, because let's go back to the follower thing, because I thought about this earlier today or yesterday or whenever this was all going on. Right. I think part of the reason Mike thinks that's a valuable metric, and Mike, I believe, has admitted this. Mike does, other than just having people tell him how awesome he is, because he's a narcissist, all Mike cares about is making money. And he said this. He said, getting rich is a
virtue.
Getting rich is a virtue.
Yes. And look, that's fine. If that's your goal, look, you know, that's fine. It never was mine explicitly. My goal was to provide the best information I could. And the fact that I was able to make a living out of it was just me getting lucky. And I'll be the first one to admit that, right? My goal, because trust me, I could have made a lot more money than I did by selling out like all the others, like doing all the scummy stuff that the rest of them did. I guarantee you all of them in the 2000s made way more money than I did as part of their little mailing list circle jerk. But I didn't care, because I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror. And not that I don't think about it every day. I'm like, I see this stuff and I'm like, yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for me to stop having, you know, ethics and just do whatever it takes to get rich, so I can go, you know, go live on a beach. But it's not who I am. And towards that, that's what's super important to him, because he's got to have the numbers. He's got to have the followers. So he'll tell them whatever he needs to tell them to keep them. Oh, what I was also going to say, right? I was mentioning that scientists behind closed doors, they talk a lot of crap. They just don't do it in the journals. There's a general truism that, you know, what you are publicly, you are the opposite privately. And a lot of these people, by which I mean, you know, Brad and James and some of those folks, they're super nice publicly. And then when you find out about who they are as real people, you think I'm a bad person? You have no idea. So Mike's whole thing, he's like, oh, followers an important metric to him, because that's how they can sell their shitty app, based on the lie that he built his muscle with training and not with grams of gear. Because he has been lying to people about his use for at least a decade. I know he's admitted it occasionally, because he wants people to think
Greg
that
Doucette, looking at it through his pro bodybuilder coach lens, is skeptical of the doses Mike purports to take.
I've only ever seen one or two individuals that I could say have that kind of talk, that are that like far off the wagon. And one of them, I said, he wanted to win really bad. And he said, Greg, give me the highest cycle that you could ever do. I'm like, all right, I don't recommend it, but I'm going to tell you what I'm on exactly. The highest cycle I'd ever done. He followed it, did the show. He won the overall. After the show, he says, Greg, I just doubled everything you told me to take. So whatever I took, he doubled it. I was on high doses. He sounds more like this guy. And so when I hear that I'm on 5 milligrams of Halo just at the end to just get hard, and 100 milligrams of Tren, and that's it, I'm like,
oh,
I think that's his daily dose. And I just don't understand what he's talking about. Like, I don't understand, because he's never shown his blood work, of which I've challenged him to show the blood work. He's on all these other medications to combat his high blood pressure and so on. And he acts healthy. He acts like he's doing it in a healthy way, which I don't believe. I think he's on more drugs in the off season than he would claim to be when he's at his highest doses.
Yeah, I know. And that's, well, remember, Mike only used to lie. He doesn't lie now. He only used to.
Correct.
That was yesterday.
Yeah,
Mike's a whole new person. Today is today.
Yeah.
We can't judge him on the 15 years of pathological lies that he told. We must take him at his word, because a liar would never lie about not lying anymore. Yeah, I think that's
the last critique Mike voices is that it's inevitable that sooner or later you'll turn your back on anyone you're on good terms with.
It is inevitable. If you're on good terms with him, he will turn his back on you sooner or later.
Honestly, I think what Mike should say is just, you don't suffer fools gladly.
Well, and again, it's objectively not true. I've had that criticized. Martin Birkin, during one of his tirades against me, said exactly the same thing, because I criticized the claims he was making, and he used the exact same guru bullshit that they all do before saying, Lyle's really smart. It's too bad he's so unstable and he's going through his blah, 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 blah. Seriously, do y'all just get a manual on how to do this stuff? Because it's just word for word the same stuff. Because again, factually, there are lots of people in this industry that I have been on good terms with for absolute years, even when we disagree about things. And that's because they treat me honestly, right? That's what it comes down to. When someone like Brad or Menno, who I'll admit I never particularly liked, but neither here nor there, when I go into his comments and point out that an article he wrote is objectively wrong, and his initial response is, are you off your meds again? No, I'm not going to stay friends with that person, period. It has nothing to do with our disagreement. That's never been a bit of it, right? And realize Brad was the one who blocked me. Eric blocked me. James blocked me. Why? Because I criticized Brad's science on legitimate grounds. I'll give Mike credit that he has not blocked me. Lane blocks anyone that criticizes him. And Lane will kick people to the curb in a heartbeat.
Mike's team might have deleted your comments, though.
They do now, because Mike cannot handle seeing my name. They do that now, but Mike has not blocked me on his social media, and I will give him credit for that. In that, he is unlike most of them. But Lane will block anyone that disagrees with him. He did it during the metabolic damage thing, right? He does it now. And without going into another bit of drama, I'm sure we could examine the fact of, the little falling out that Renaissance periodization had among themselves, and how
with
someone
Charlie.
that was, I wasn't sure if it was okay to bring that up, but no, Mike's right. I don't suffer fools, but it's not everyone that I've been on good terms with. If I have a disagreement with someone and they immediately go to the well of personal attacks and bullshit, and especially lying about me. But what Mike is saying is that this little group of 6 people within the internet fitness circle jerk, I'm on the outs with all of them, because I gave criticism that they could not address directly without personal attacks or BS. He's not aware of the people that aren't involved in this nonsense. That has never happened, because even when we disagreed, it was an honest disagreement. We debated with facts. We had a difference of opinion, and that's perfectly fine. They never had to go down the well of attacking me or my trainees or any of that. At that point, you are dead to me. But again, to that, I would say, let's say it was true. I mean, it's not, but let's say it was. And I mean, what does that have to do with anything? If we're talking about my information, my books, my evidence, my science, our criticisms of him, it's got nothing to do with anything other than being yet another pathetic, made up, irrelevant personal attack. Because it's also not the first time I've heard it. It's just part of the we can't rebut Lyle playbook. And it's always the same stuff. The only thing, I'd made an IG post at one point, and I was like, you know what rebuts scientific evidence? Scientific evidence. What doesn't rebut it is, Lyle's mean, you can trust me, F you, Lyle. Lane, when I was criticizing the metabolic damage, one of his very scientific rebuttals was, Lyle made my wife cry, which I bet he made her cry more when he cheated on her while she was pregnant. Like, these are supposed expert PhD.
With an Australian physique competitor whom he later divorced.
Right, because as a narcissist, every one of his businesses is. I mean, if Mike wants to criticize someone for basically turning on everyone he's ever been associated with, A, he needs to look at himself and how many people he's had falling outs with, and B, look at Lane. Lane has multiple business failings, and somehow it's never his fault. It's always the other guy, his ex-wife, the girl that he cheated with. But yeah, apparently Lyle made my wife cry. Lane linked to a video of me goofing off with my dogs, because that apparently rebuts my criticism. It's just phenomenal to watch. People that are like, I'm the anti-guru, I believe in science. Yeah, until your science is wrong, which is when I enter the picture.
Lyle, I think we've addressed Mike's attack on you. I just wanted to point out that I've got my phone open here. Later on in the Eric, Mike, Greg squashing the beef video, in the same breath that Mike excoriated you with, he repeatedly extols the virtues of positivity, cooperation.
If we can be more positive, then maybe some other folks can be more positive too.
Yeah.
And I immediately recalled this Instagram post that Mike's wife made. So it was made 6th of January 2025. Dr. Crystal Guevara. Focus on the value you bring to the table instead of criticizing others. Results always speak louder than negativity. She continues in the caption, I thought crapping on other fields or other colleagues, even to sell one's good, singular, and services died back in 2014. But I guess I'm just that good at tailoring my social media algorithm, #Monday mood, #coaching, #marketing. So by Mike's wife's own standards, Mike's behavior should be condemned, unless, of course, the rules only apply to others.
For narcissists, they always do. For hypocrites, they always do. What others are it's because, and I'm sure if you were to take her to task on this, sorry, I had to eat my dinner, got to stay anabolic. It's a better meal than Mike ate during his contest prep, that's for damn sure. It would be fascinating to see the mental gymnastics that she would go through to explain why Mike being critical of other fields is just him telling the truth. Other people are just dumping on folks. That's the kind of games that folks play. When I do it, sorry, not me, Lyle, when I do it. The game people play is when I'm critical, it's because I'm being an honest truth teller. And when you're critical, it's because you're a bad person. Even if it's the exact same criticism. And it's worse for narcissists. Look at politics. Look at all of these fields. What my group does is okay. What your group does is bad, even when they're the exact same thing. I'm sure in her mind, she doesn't see Mike for what he is. Or maybe she's just doing what most do and making trite Instagram, Fitspiration, #motivational BS because she knows people. Like I said, they all do it. And then you meet them in real life and you find that it's all just a front. It's all just part of this performative action.
Well, I have my reasons to suspect that it's an attack on you or a response to Mike's critics. And it is kind of understandable and nice in a way that Mike's wife would be sticking up for him if this is the actual explanation.
And that would be true if he didn't do it 10 times as hard and 20 times as much and with 30 times worse arguments. Criticizing information in the field of science that's predicated on information is not a bad thing.
You'll find this funny, Lyle.
Personal attacks and saying someone is a loser with mental health issues, okay, somehow she'll think, well, that's okay, because that's the truth. But dumping on Mike, that's beyond the pale.
You'll love this. So in the comments, Derek Wilcox, who's a coach at RP. By the way, the RP website says that the RP coaches are handpicked by Dr. Mike Israetel. I guess that's supposed to reassure the consumer that he or she is making, well, it is in good hands, but I'd find that the complete opposite of reassuring. Anyway, here's what Derek says in the comments section of Crystal's post. So we've got Wilcox Strength Inc. True story. People don't usually talk crap about people doing worse than them. So I guess by Derek's, well, I mean, is Mike doing worse than you by Derek's logic? Because that would be an incredible admission. Quite honestly, I think the answer is probably yes. Mike is doing worse than you. I mean, your credibility is high, and Mike's seems to be increasingly questionable. I, for one, only see him. I see him as a little bit of strategic, fast talker.
But this is what Instagram is great for. When there's a paper by Buckner et al. That came out criticizing the volume studies and pointing out that the standards that were being held to one set of papers were not being applied to another set of papers. Schoenfeld, Brad put up on his Instagram, you can tell someone's bias by their response to that paper. Now, the implication that I'm sure the midwits that follow him took from that is like, yeah, all those people are biased for supporting that paper. It cuts both ways. Brad's response to dismissing that paper shows his bias. They don't realize that these arguments cut both ways, but they think that it only applies to other people, right? Okay, we've made a couple videos about Mike. Now, most of my videos about the failure thing were about failure. I brought Mike into it because at the time, what he was telling people Zero Reps Reserve was not. That was it. And trust me, he got super
at the time, as if he's not still misleading people about failure.
I mean, sorry, he was making constant videos, 0 RIR bicep workout, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I was making that point. Your information is wrong. How many videos did he do? Talking circles, talking crap about me. An hour of character defamation. Still with this crap about me. We did that one video with, criticizing his information. And I'm willing to bet you if you added it up, he said way more about me than we've ever said about him. And everything we said about him was factual. And everything he said about me was personal. So yes, by this own individual's logic, I am more successful than Mike because Mike spends way more time. I wouldn't bother. I wouldn't have bothered with this if they hadn't deleted it. Because again, I can't be bothered. I can't be asked to care about all the crap people are talking about me. It does because it doesn't. Mike's a special case because of the lie after the lie after the lie after the lie. That's it. People want to think I'm mean? Cool. You'll eventually realize I was right because they always do. It may take them a bunch of years, but whatever. If you don't like my information because you think I'm a big meanie head, cool. There's lots of people out there that will be publicly polite to you, even as they sell you a con and a scam and take your money for nothing. And, halfway between Thanos and the Mandarin and Iron Man, I consider myself a teacher, and eventually it brings them back to me because they realize that, I did. There's tons of people in my Facebook group. I'm like, yep, I did high volume, I did high frequency, I did this, I did that, and all I got was tendonitis. I'm like,
I get consultations. Yeah. I get people telling me, I did this high volume Israetel-esque training, and I got injured and broken.
And then they come back and go, yeah. I had at least a couple people years later after the Brad study who defended it vigorously, PM me, and they were like, in hindsight, I think you were right. Of course I was. But yeah.
Do you have any concluding remarks to do with Mike's attack on you?
Well, I would just summarize all of this. If Mike thinks that, I'm, quote, smarter than I think I am, which again, not the first time I've had someone level that against me. If he thinks that my or your arguments are so poorly thought out, if he thinks that we're so dumb and he's so right, it's very, very, very simple. Support those claims with facts, with evidence. He pretends to be a sports scientist when it suits him. He pretends to be a PhD when it's Dr. Mike Israetel. Oh, give me a break. If he is a sports scientist, if he is evidence-based, if he believes in facts, it's very, very simple. Lay off the personal attacks. Stop with the character assassination. Stop with the lies. Oh, wait, Mike doesn't lie anymore. If you have a rebuttal to one of my arguments, one of your arguments, one of anyone's arguments, the only valid way to rebut those are with facts. And if all you can bring is personal attacks, and that's clearly all he can bring because that's all he's brought for years, that means you don't have any facts.
Yes.
Because if you did, you'd bring them. If I sat here for an hour and we just went, Mike sucks, Mike's dumb, Mike's this, Mike's that, that's not an argument. That's not criticism. Dumb people will think it is. Yeah. We focused on his information. We provided better, more accurate information. I provided physiological explanations of why it was wrong. That is how you have a factual argument. Everything else is a logical fallacy, and that may be Mike's greatest skill. It's sure not getting into contest shape. Now that's not an ad hominem. Actually, that's an insult. There's a difference. But
Well, it can be ad hominem without being argumentum ad hominem. Argumentum ad hominem is where you say someone is wrong because of his or her character.
Correct.
Ad hominem is just peripheral. You can insult someone while at the same time critiquing the misinformation.
People have accused me of that, right? If I say, don't listen to Solomon because he's dumb, okay, that's an ad hominem. If I go, factually, he's wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong about this, and that's why he's dumb, that's an insult. That is not an argument, but people are like, well, you call people names all the time. Yeah, I call them an idiot because factually, here's why they're an idiot. I didn't say don't listen to them because they're an idiot. I said don't listen to them because factually they're wrong. But people can't make that distinction.
If I may, Lyle, I agree with you that Mike's response is straight out of the same tired playbook. Ignore the actual critique, attack the personality of the critic, repeat. And as you said, for someone who purports to be fact and evidence-based, Mike just doesn't seem that interested in either. Instead of addressing your actual arguments, he just throws out a bunch of personal insults and hopes that's enough to discredit you. It's not. The reality is pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
You pointed out problems with Mike's claims. Mike never actually refuted them, and instead he just lashed out. And for all his talk about positivity, Mike still seems very invested in taking these cheap shots. And the irony would almost be funny if it weren't so very predictable. But at the end of the day, this isn't about personalities. It's about the truth. And Mike has made it abundantly clear that he'd rather attack the messenger than deal with the message.
But see, I would go a step further than that. I don't think it's a matter of preferring to do that. It's a matter of that's all he's got. It's just that simple. If he had factual evidence to bring to the table, he would have done it by now. When he comes up with excuses for these supposed emails that I sent about why he's not going to produce them, it would take less time to produce them than to make the excuses. He has had 7 years, perhaps more at this point, to rebut the failure stuff. He's had less time, what we talked about with his, competition and his training claims. It's not a matter of preferring to rely on character assassination. It's a matter of that's all he's got. If he had something more, he would have brought it to the table. He hasn't because he doesn't. And I would suggest to anyone listening to this who's having trouble following what I'm saying, if you bring up a factual criticism of someone that deserves an answer, if they can't, or more accurately won't, directly answer that question, that's your answer. Because if they could answer it, if all the people who said I'm wrong about everything could have proven me wrong with facts, they would do it. Simply saying you're wrong is not an argument. Saying you're wrong because you're mean is not an argument. Saying you're wrong because you've lost followers is not an argument. If someone says you're wrong and can't demonstrate why you're wrong, they know you're right. It was like in the failure videos, and I will absolutely wrap up. I said flat out, take a video of you doing an all-out set and send it to me. And if you prove me wrong, I will put up the video and I will admit you're wrong. The fact that no one sent me a single video tells me that deep down, they knew I was right. But they couldn't acknowledge that. So rather than taking my challenge, they simply said, it's just you suck, we don't have to take your challenge. Well, yeah, it's because you know I'm right. So yeah, if you think I'm wrong, prove me wrong. If you think our arguments are poorly thought out, demonstrate it with facts. Otherwise, just admit that you're wrong and admit you have nothing better to bring to the table. That's it.
That's everything. Thank you again, Lyle.
Sure. Thank you.